In this tutorial, we will learn how to set up a block and insert it into a piece. We will use the baby cable vest as an example again, and if you haven't done so already, please view the tutorial on how to set up a complete project first. There you will learn how to set up the back piece into which we are actually going to insert the block. Let's first take a look at the block that we are going to input. It is a cable pattern with a 6-row repeat. It will be inserted at row 7 of the piece and then repeated indefinitely. To create a block for this cable pattern, we click on Blocks in the screen and then on plus to add a new block. We can call it Cable Pattern. Creating events for blocks is very much similar to creating events for pieces. You cannot, however, insert a block into another block. Let's go back and look at the directions for the first cable pattern row. We have to purl 6 and then keep on repeating to knit 4, purl 6. To create an event for the first block row, we click on Add New Event, which takes us to the Event Setup screen where we can customize the settings. Since this is not an increase or decrease, we can leave the type as the default alert. For the start of this event, it's important to notice that although this event happens the first time in row 7 of the piece, it's actually the first block row, and that's why we have to set the starting row to 1. We will later insert this block at row 7 of the piece, which makes it appear in the correct row in the counter. As the node, we simply copy the instructions from the pattern. And since this event happens only once, the default occurrence settings are fine. This means we are done with the setup of the first block row. The second row of the pattern block is to knit 6 and then keep on repeating to purl 4, knit 6. Note that this not only happens in row 8 of the piece, which is row 2 of the pattern block, but also in all following wrong side rows. I already started the setup of the second block row and I copied the instructions into the node. Now we have to change the occurrence settings since this event actually repeats. Since this event happens in every wrong side row, every rich row should be set to 2. How many times does it happen? Well, this block contains 6 rows, so there are 3 wrong side rows. And you can see we changed the settings to every second row 3 times. Row 9 of the piece, which is row 3 of the cable block, directs us to purl 6 and then to repeat to do the cable and purl 6. Since this row is so straightforward to set up, I already went ahead and created an event for it. As mentioned, this is going to be row 3 of the cable block, and since it happens only once per block, the default occurrence settings don't have to be changed. Looking at row 11 of the piece, you can see that the directions are exactly the same as in row 7. This means that row 1 and 5 of the cable block are exactly the same. So we want to modify the occurrence settings of the first row of this block. We want this event to appear in row 1 and 5 of the block, which means that every which row should be set to 4 and how many times to 2. We are now done with the setup of this block, and you may notice that the app automatically figured how many rows are contained in this block. This is a very important number and you may want to double check your input if this is not what you expected to see. The number of rows in a block is important if you want to repeat a block. In this case, this block would repeat every 6 rows. Note that you can see this number only on the device. So if you're inputting a pattern on the web portal, it's a good idea to check the block setup after importing the project to your device. Now let's insert this block. Select the piece that you want to insert it into and go to Setup. Scroll down and click on Insert Pattern Block. First choose which block to insert. In this case, there is only one choice. Then we have to specify at which point of the piece this block should start. Just like events, a block can be linked to other blocks or events, or start at a specific row or height. According to our directions, this block should start in row 7 of the piece. Lastly, we have to specify how many times we want this block to appear. Since we don't know how many times we're going to do the cable pattern, we choose unlimited here. Just like this, you can insert a block into any piece of your project, or also multiple times into the same piece. Let's go to the counter to check if everything works as intended. Advancing the row counter, you can see that the block indeed starts in row 7. And that all block rows appear as scheduled. While you're knitting, you might be wondering how many repeats of this block you've already done. And you can go to the Event Details screen for more information on this. Here you can see more information about the event itself and the block that it belongs to. Note that we're in row 4 of the 6-row repeat block and that this is the second time that we're knitting this block. Just like with events, if you want to change how this block is being inserted, go to Setup and you can change the settings here. We have reached the end of the tutorial and we have successfully created and inserted a block into a piece.